Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Office of Tax Appeals. My name is Tommy Leung. I am the judge for today's appeal. A few housekeeping items before we get started. As we discussed at the pre-hearing conference a couple of weeks ago, this hearing is being live streamed, so anything that is said that is confidential will be broadcast to the public. So be careful about talking about things like addresses and social security numbers, that kind of stuff. There might be some medical testimony, so maybe not be that specific. Might be helpful. And we will be getting a transcript of this appeal. So for purpose of the transcript, we ask that everybody please speak clearly at a normal pace and speak one at a time. And the best practice is to mute your mics when not speaking. Before we go on the record and begin introductions, the issue for this case is whether the 2017 refund claim is timely. Mr. Parsons, any questions for me before we get started? I think you're muted.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gates, any questions for me before we get started?
No questions, Judge Leung.
Okay, thank you. So we are now going on the record on appeal number 240917413. Today is May 22nd, 2025, approximately 1 p.m. This is the appeal of Parsons. Before we begin, a couple of things were agreed upon by the parties. Number one, that this appeal will be conducted under the small case program, which essentially means there's one judge hearing and deciding the case. Number two, this hearing will be conducted electronically. Number three, the exhibits that were attached to appellant's brief are admitted into evidence, and then they are now being made part of the record. Number four, respondents exhibits A through G are also being admitted into evidence and made part of the record. Neither party objected to either party's exhibits. And we have one witness for today, Ms. Parsons. So before I turn it over to Mr. Parsons, would you please raise your right hand? And Ms. Parsons, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please put your hand down. Okay, Mr. Parsons, you may begin with your introductions and make your presentation whenever you feel you're ready. You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yes. So thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, members, staff of the Franchise Tax Board and Office of Tax Appeals for taking time to hear us today. I think what I'd like to do is to, if it's kosher, to turn it over to my mom to sort of tell the story of how she and we got here, and allow her to provide context for that. Is that acceptable, Your Honor?
Very. That would be great.
Okay. All right. Mom, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, forgive me. I hope it's under 10 minutes. I understand everybody's time is valuable, and I appreciate everyone being here today. Just for context, and I have notes here to help me, if that's okay. For context, for the first time in my life, I ended up becoming overwhelmed, distrustful, and stopped paying my taxes as a result. After my mother died in late 2012, and both my children had moved out in the mid 2010s, I was left living by myself. And normally I'm a pretty, self-reliant person. However, this period was very challenging to me because my mother was a force of nature, and she was the matriarch and director of my family for all of my entire life. And she was my sounding board and usually the instigator of actions to be taken regarding my finances and my property. So, to be without her for my life and to suddenly have to start managing everything on my own, especially when I had questions about what I'd inherited exactly and how it impacted me, I started to feel increasingly uncertain about who I could trust and what was real and accurate, and who was trying to scam me or steal my property, especially given at the time. It's not so bad now, but I was bombarded with real estate photographs online, people saying that my property was for sale when it wasn't for sale. It just became overwhelming to me. It got so bad that my mental health declined, even to the point where I felt uncomfortable leaving the house. I thought someone was going to come in and steal some from me, steal my records. It was so bad that my children, my son especially, noticing my increasing anxiety, sent his trusted friends over to house sit in order to get me out of the house to go do something, anything, even go to the park. So at one point, I became convinced, it was so bad, that neighbors above me had installed listening equipment. And my poor son went around trying to figure out, prove to me that that was not so. And during this time, and this was over a period of several years, it just kept getting worse and worse. And when he finally became increasingly concerned about my anxiety, he started helping me review some of my finances. And that's when he discovered that I hadn't been paying my taxes. And especially that I hadn't been not paying my taxes for several years. It is at that time that he engaged my daughter as an assistant to help me resolve all of this issue. And we've also, my daughter has engaged a family therapist to help us go through, to improve our communication and to reduce my anxiety. And the OTA will likely note that my son Winston had power of attorney established before I stopped paying my taxes. And this power of attorney, before it had been he had been included, had been part of my mother's trust and my trust. And it was specifically put there, whether it was my mother's trust or my trust, for the benefit of, in case one of us is run over by a bus, and we're in a coma and we can't make decisions. It was for really some extreme health issue. He was not aware that I had not been managing my finances and was, extremely overwhelmed. It was only after, my anxiety level had gotten to such a state that he intervened and discovered this. So I am just deeply sorry that I did not pay my taxes in 2017. I've always tried to be a diligent person, but I froze. My anxiety just got the better of me. And when I got in so deep that I just didn't know what else to do, it just got worse. So it's due, it is my taxes receiving the return, having this, the 2017 extra money would be greatly appreciated for me and my family, given the fact that the property that I am in, when it had been constructed, had had several issues because the contractor was negligent. And I have had to come up with funds to make repairs as they've been discovered. So this, in no small part, would be greatly appreciated. And I'm sorry I couldn't have claimed it in 2017. I could have used it. But in a nutshell, that is my backstory for this. And I'm happy to have my son add anything if he feels that I've left anything out. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Parsons, anything you wish to add?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I will turn it over to the Franchise Tax Board. Mr. Gates, do you have any questions for Ms. Gates? For Ms. Parsons?
No questions for Ms. Parsons.
Okay, Ms. Parsons, at what point did your son discover that he needed to give you a hand to assist you? When, approximately?
I think it was I think it was 2020 sometime, maybe mid 2020 or 20.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I mean, especially because I was checking on you more because COVID had started.
Okay. And Ms. Parsons, did you seek professional help for your anxiety?
No, I did not initially. It wasn't until my daughter came to suggest it. And that was probably, all I could think of was I had to keep going. I had to somehow make decisions about my everyday life, every day, one at a time. If something had to be painted, I mean, I could make very specific decisions, but just in general, the general confusion of related to the taxes, that was completely overwhelming to me. Yeah.
And at what point did your daughter suggest professional help?
Oh,
About
gosh.
what time? About what year?
I think she had trouble finding someone, or did she, Winston? It was 20, when did we, I can't remember. Was it,
Well,
we had COVID too. Yeah, we had to get out of COVID. And that was an issue.
I forget the exact time frame, but I think in roughly 2019, I had broached it with my mom and tried to get her to seek a medical professional. But I think she was too distrusting at the time,
Yes.
especially as someone who was raised in, I would say, a fairly conservative family who did not believe in mental health. And so we started seeing a family therapist whom we see weekly early 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ms. Parsons, before you started feeling anxiety, who was doing your taxes?
My mother had engaged a CPA, but my mother was a CPA herself, retired. And so as a result, my mother's eyes, even when she was, starting to fail, were always, her health was starting to fail. She always had the decision making. It was her initiation that we go ahead and develop 2 pieces of property. It was my mother's decision making, even on installing new stoves or whatever it was. She was, as I tried to convey, she was a force of nature for me growing up with her. I mean, she taught me how to balance my checkbook at age 16, and I had to balance it to the penny or there would be repercussions. I mean, that's my mother. I mean, it had benefits, but it was also extremely, anxiety producing as a child growing up. And so at times I think I felt like I was almost set up for having anxiety. I guess that's my statement on this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons. Mr. Parsons, you'll get 5 minutes at the end for any rebuttal, but I'm going to turn to the Franchise Tax Board. Mr. Gates, do you want to start your presentation?
Oh, yes, thank you, Judge Leon.
Mhm.
Yes, well, good afternoon. As you'd said, my name is Jeffrey Gates, and I'm here with Cynthia Kent, and we are on behalf of the respondent Franchise Tax Board in this matter. And the issue is whether or not the claim for refund in 2017 tax year was timely. So under the Revenue and Tax Code, this section 19306, it provides that the claim for refund must be made within either 4 years from the due date of the return or within 1 year of the date that an overpayment occurred. Now, in order for this statute the statute of limitations to be told, there's a narrow allowance for it, which permits a person to toll so long as they are financially disabled. And that's under Code Section 19316. Now, the financial disability requires a few items to be in existence at the time, but most notably under Section B2, it states that a person is not financially disabled if any other person is legally authorized to act on that individual's behalf in financial matters. So as was mentioned before, a power of attorney existed, and it came into existence in July 2nd, 2009. Now, and this power of attorney allowed a third party to act on her behalf in financial matters in the event of incapacity or disability. It also allowed for, in Section 2.1, general authority as to business matters and tax matters, and in Section 2.5, specific to claims for refund for any tax years between 1980 and 2050. So this power of attorney, this was in effect throughout the statute of limitations timeline, which was from the due date of the 2017 return up until 4 years after that. So because this power of attorney was in existence at the time, it follows in that Section B2 creates the inference that financial disability does not exist for this particular claim for refund. And we certainly do sympathize and understand the difficulties of having to have assistance with financial matters, and especially when there's a claim for refund denied. But under that particular statute, the code states a person shall not be considered financially disabled. So this is outside of Franchise Tax Board's discretion. If the person is not financially disabled, the claim for refund needs to be denied in this case. Therefore, Franchise Tax Board asks the Office of Tax Appeals for a finding in its favor. Thank you. If you have any questions, we would certainly be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. I'm going to let Mr. Parsons speak now if Mr. Parsons, if you want to, before I go ask any questions on the franchise tax board. Mr. Parsons, any rebuttal or final remarks?
Only that, as we mentioned prior, I think, as the Office of Tax Appeals or Franchise Tax Board mentioned, we had power of attorney established in 2009, and that was something that, candidly, my grandmother had us go through the process of even before she passed in 2012. And so it was a box to be checked, but it was not. I was in no way, shape, or form cognizant or considered myself needing to be the party responsible for my mom and her finances until much later, and especially once I discovered that she had not been paying her taxes. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gates, do you have any examples of what circumstances would qualify under the 19316 financial disability, which FTB would grant that type of relief?
Under for particular examples, there certainly are many in there. One of them would be when there's a physician considers the appellant's impairment to be either terminal or expect that it would last for longer than 12 months, and that there's proof of this financial disability through, say, an affidavit from a treating physician who would be able to show that. So in those types of instances, yes, financial disability would exist so long as it met the requirements of the code.
So in that situation, would the period of the medical condition need to last throughout the 4 years of the statute of limitations, or how long would that disability need to exist?
The disability would need to exist throughout the statute of limitations time period, but it would toll for that period of time, right? So, for example, if in this case the return was due on April 15th, 2018, then a financial period of disability would exist for, say, 12 months after that. It would then push the amount 12 months beyond the 4 years. So it would be 5 years from the due date rather than 4 years. So as long as the disability existed, that's where the tolling would occur.
If I may add, Judge, the period of tolling is as long as the taxpayer is deemed to be financially disabled and the affidavit is submitted, signed by a physician, it's for the period of time that the doctor writes in the affidavit that that person was unable to handle their financial affairs and there was no one else that was able to. So if it's for a 2-month period, even though they had an illness that was longer than 12 months, but if it happened to be just during the 2 months of the statute's open period, we would add that 2 months to the end of the time here. So in this particular situation, the statute ran on April 15th of 2022, and she filed her return on May 15th of 2024. So she would need to have been financially disabled for the requisite period of time to toll the statute from the April 15th, 2022 period to make her May 15th, 2024 claim for refund timely. I hope that answers your questions more.
Yeah, I think so. So we're talking about at least 24 months then, from April of 2022 through May of 2024.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I've gotten all the information I need for this hearing, and I thank both parties for presenting a wonderful and succinct case for me to handle. I am going to close the record for this hearing, and I will endeavor to get a decision out to the parties within 100 days. And hope everybody have a great day. The next hearing for OTA will begin at approximately 2:40 p.m. Thank you all. Again, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.